guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing a dupe comparison and swatch and review video on the new Colourpop Yes Please palette. This has been a very talked about palette and it looks like this right here. A lot of people's initial thoughts were that it's very similar to the Natasha Denona Sunset palette, but this is $16 and that palette is $129. So I had a lot of people request this video. You guys know I love Colourpop and I do love Natasha Denona eyeshadows as well. So we are going to get down to the nitty gritty. I'm going to be swatching all the colors that are very similar, going through the different weights of the product, the colors, and really overall if I think it is a good dupe for the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. So anyways, really quick before we get started, if you are new to my channel, then welcome to my channel. Make sure before you leave, you do not forget to subscribe down below. That way you're notified for future videos from me. I do post twice a week, so I post on Sundays and Wednesdays, and I throw in some bonus videos here and there. Also, I'm going to be doing a giveaway with this video, so you guys will have the chance to win the Yes Please palette. I picked up an extra, and then I have some other ones that will be included in future giveaways. So make sure to subscribe, and I will have the rules linked down below for the giveaway. Another thing, really quick before we get started, I did move my beauty room around a little bit. I have noticed a slight echo, and I saw a couple comments about it, so just know I am trying to get it worked on. I mean, I'm trying to make this space as efficient as possible, and so there's going to be some bumps in the road. But anyways, I'm so excited to show you guys the comparison, so let's get started. Okay, so here is the Colourpop palette. Kind of give you guys a close-up. And then here is the Natasha Denona palette. So off the bat, a couple things to note is, of course, the size difference. The Natasha Denona palette is a lot bigger than the Colourpop palette. The Colourpop is a cardboard packaging where the Natasha Denona is a much nicer, thicker packaging. I feel like if you drop this, I don't feel like the shadows would break, where this, it's cardboard, so they more than likely could break. And then the Natasha Denona palette, even though I typically don't use them, it does come with a mirror right here, so you have a nice mirror to do your makeup in. As far as the size of these, the Natasha Denona has 15 shades. The Colourpop has 12, so you are getting less shades in the Colourpop. And then as far as the size difference, the Colourpop shadows are 0.85 grams, and the Natasha Denona ones are 2.5 grams. So, I mean, you are getting a lot more product. So yeah, a big difference in what you're getting as far as product. So really quick before we jump into the swatches, I just want to say that this palette was supposed to be restocked today, but they actually delayed the restock. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because there's good and bad things about it. So for the people that aren't able to get your hands on it, I'm very sorry. But, you know, it does stink whenever you're really excited about getting something or trying to get online to get a restock and then they push out the date. But the reason they announced that they did that is because they had a huge delay in shipping. Normally for me, Colourpop, I think they normally ship within a couple days typically, and I ordered my palette on the 16th of this month and it did not ship until I believe yesterday. So it was a super delay in shipping, and the only reason I'm able to do this video is because of my sweet Aunt Lisa. She actually ordered the palettes at the same time as I did, but hers came in before mine, so she let me have her palette so I could do a review for you guys, and then when mine come in, she's gonna get my palette. So thank you so much to my aunt. She is just the best and a makeup junkie like I am. So yeah, the shipping was very delayed and they saw comments and concerns. I will say, like, as a YouTuber and then also as a consumer, I do have a ton of respect for Colourpop for doing that, because one, that's a big move, right? You're delaying a restock that people are like highly anticipating, but also I feel like some companies can get greedy and they're just pushing out so much product and not really listening to our concerns if it's shipping or, you know, whatever it is. I think it was Kylie Cosmetics last year that released the holiday collection, and then a week later she put it on sale, and those were shipped before the ones that paid full price. But I do think it's really great that Colourpop is taking in the feedback and they aren't like trying to be greedy. They're actually saying, hey, like, we appreciate everyone that did order and we want to make sure that we can get all of your orders out before we're taking a ton of other orders in. And you got to think that's also affecting their new sales. So I just think that that's really great that they did that. It's just a really big move and I have a lot of respect for them for doing that. So yeah, I just want to put that out there because, again, I don't have my palettes yet. I don't have y'all's palettes yet, but they're coming. That's how I'm doing the giveaway. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into swatches. I'm wearing this palette on my eyes today. I have the highlight palette they just released on my cheeks as well, so it's very glowy. Okay, so are a ton of colors that are very, very similar. There's no denying it when you look at the palettes that some of the colors do look very similar. So let's go ahead and swatch it. I'm going to start with the Colourpop palette because these are the shadows we really want to see in action. The first shade is called Full Zip, and this is like a matte, I would say probably like a brow bone highlight matte shade. This color is one of the colors that you don't have anything similar to in the Natasha Denona palette, but I think it's great that they did include just kind of like a, not plain, but you know what I mean, just like a nice brow bone matte shade. I'm trying to put this palette like this, let's hope I don't drop it. So this one is called Big Cocktails, and it's very similar to this orange shade right here, which is called Horizon. Okay, so here we have these two swatched. Okay, so here are these two swatched. The darker one is actually the Colourpop one, and the lighter one is the Natasha Denona. Obviously, this one is very pigmented, just like the Natasha Denona, but it's a little bit darker, and it kind of has more of like a redder undertone to it. So again, these are the two oranges in the palette, and then there are those swatched. So similar, both pigmented. I'm not going to go through every name, I'm just going to show you guys the different colors, but this shade right here, which is the third one on the Colourpop palette, is very similar to this pink shade. I actually have used this both ways with each palette as a transition shade. So here are these swatched. This one right here is the Natasha, and then this one in the middle is going to be the Colourpop. Okay, so here are these two swatched. I'm almost trying to remember which is which. Okay, so this one right here is the Colourpop one, and then this one is the Natasha Denona one. I think these are seriously almost identical. But yeah, again, here is that shade, and it is, I mean, super duper similar. Okay, next one we're going to do is the last one in the Colourpop on the top row, and then the first one in the Natasha palette. Okay, so here are these two swatches. The bigger swatch on my middle finger is the Colourpop, and then this one's Natasha. These are very similar when you first swatch them. Here are those side by side. This one right here is the Colourpop one. This one right here is the Natasha one. So a thing to note is that this one has a little bit more of like a lighter pinky kind of undertone, and this one has more of like a burgundy kind of darker undertone. Both very pretty and very similar, very creamy. Very, very, very creamy. It is amazing how good these feel, especially, I mean, between the price difference, they're both very creamy. And there that is up close. Okay, moving on to the second row of Colourpop. You're going to have this shade right here, which is super similar to this shade right here. Okay, so here are these swatched on the fingers. This one right here is the Natasha, and the middle finger is Colourpop. Now, here are the comparisons side by side. As you can see, the Natasha one just has a unbelievable shift to it. It is just absolutely gorgeous. It packs a big punch. And the Colourpop one, it's still very gorgeous. It's just a little bit more sheer. I mean, not too sheer. It's just not as like breathtaking as the Natasha one. Very similar. This one obviously has a little bit more of like an orange shift to it whenever you have it in the light, whereas this one isn't as much. But really similar colors, and there are those. Just that way you can see them with the shift. But I think that you could also build this one up a little bit more to maybe make it a little bit more intense. Not that it's not intense, it's intense. It's just not as intense as Natasha Denona. You guys, this is looking like a pretty good run. And I did use a lot of colors on my eyes today too. Okay, next shade's going to be this gold shade right here. And it's going to be similar to the gold shade right here in the Natasha palette. Here they are on the fingers. Again, the Colourpop is going to be the middle shadow, and then the Natasha is going to be the one right here on my green finger. The Natasha one has a more like almost chunky texture. You can tell the biggest difference in the shadows as far as like how crazy pigmented this is compared to this one. But as far as like the color, again, very similar. I do think that you could build this up a little bit more. But yeah, there are those two colors side by side. Okay, there you go. There are those. And I'm glad that there's like such a big price difference, because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, this is a dupe, and it's like $5 less than what the real one is. These two palettes, it's a big price difference. Okay, next shade we're going in is the red shade. And then we are also going in with the red shade in the Natasha palette. Okay, so here are these side by side. The Natasha one obviously is a lot more pigmented. They did a really good job on this shade, personally, I think. Okay, and here are these swatched side by side. So you can see the Natasha one, obviously it's a lot darker in color and it's more red toned, where this one It almost has like a little bit of a browner undertone to it. But again, if you're blending it out and we're looking at the color scheme, the colors are similar. Especially if you're using this like blended into the crease. I don't think you're going to be able to tell a huge difference. So there, those side by side. I'm excited. I want to start doing more dupe videos. So if you guys have a dupe that you're aware of, let me know in the comments below. I can buy them and swatch them for you guys. Then we're going to be looking at this shade right here compared to this color right here. So here the swatched, again, Colourpop is the middle finger, and then this one right here is Natasha. Here these swatched side by side. Sometimes I forget which is which. So this one right here is the Natasha one, and then this one is the Colourpop one. Very similar shades. And I will say that both of these are super creamy. I've used them both on my eyes before, and they're both creamy. All right, you're not going to be able to guess the next one, which is the dupe. So we're going to be looking at this yellow compared to this yellow. Okay, so here are these, Natasha, Colourpop. There are those swatched on the hands. So this one is the Natasha, and this one is the Colourpop. What I will say is the Natasha one has more of like a mustardy undertone, where the Colourpop one's a little bit brighter. Sorry, I don't know if I did that on the last swatch, but there those are. The next one with Colourpop is this one right here. This is a really beautiful like transition shade, which the Natasha palette does not have, but this one, it is really pretty. And just to show you guys, I didn't even think about swatching this earlier. Just so you can see the two in Colourpop that aren't in Natasha are these two matte shades, which I think are really good for this palette. You have like a really good transition shade. I used this color today. And then the brow bone shade that I talked about. So there are those two side by side. Next shade we're going in with is this really nice like tangerine orange. And we're going to compare it to the tangerine orange in this palette. And this is like such a different shade. Like I don't own any palettes where I have this color besides these two. So here these are right there. And there they are on the hand. I mean, these are very similar. It's just so crazy to me. But yeah, there is that one. Then you have the very last one, which is a dark brown. And we'll compare it to this one right here. Here these are side by side. There they are swatched. This one right here is the Natasha, and then that one is the Colourpop. Okay, so let's talk about the obvious. Obviously, these shades are all very similar in my opinion. Is the formula the same? No. With Natasha Denona, I don't really have a brand that I would say eyeshadow wise, formula wise is super comparable, because to me her eyeshadows are just out of this world. But I also really love Colourpop. I think they're probably my top two eyeshadow companies, honestly. I think Colourpop is super awesome because they do have very affordable shadows. A couple things. So as far as pros of this palette, it's a very small palette, so it's going to be super travel friendly. You're getting a bunch of different shades. Who is going to use a whole entire eyeshadow palette? I know that these shadows are smaller, and just to give you a comparison, the Colourpop eyeshadows are around the same size as like Makeup Geek, and they are right about this size. The Colourpop eyeshadows in this palette are smaller than a normal eyeshadow. So here's like the comparison side by side. It is smaller, but again, I personally will probably never use up a whole entire palette. So for me, it's not a huge deal, especially because the palette is $16, which is just crazy. Really nice transition shade in this palette where you don't necessarily have that type of color in the Natasha palette. You're getting 12 in this palette as opposed to Natasha one, which has 15. And then also the pan size, of course, like I said, is a lot smaller, but the palette is super cute. I also would say that it is going to get dirty just like looking at me swatching it. I don't know if you can even tell, but there's like eyeshadow all over it. And I don't really 100% love the cardboard, but I'll say that this cardboard does feel a lot sturdier than other palettes that I had that felt really cheap. This doesn't feel cheap. It's actually kind of like weighted, which is nice. So yeah, overall, I think this is a really great palette. If you have had your eye on the Natasha palette, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. If, you know, the Natasha one's very far out of your price range, I definitely think this is the next best thing to it. The colors are super similar. Of course, some of them aren't as pigmented. You might have to build them up a little bit more, but the color selection's definitely there, and I definitely would recommend this palette. Like I said, I have it on my eyes today. It blended beautifully. I wore it yesterday as well to test out some of the other colors, and they blend really nice. They are pigmented when they go on. And for $16, you cannot beat this. So, in my opinion, is the Colourpop one a dupe for the Natasha Denona. The colors are definitely similar. The formula is going to be completely different. So, of course, that part's not a dupe. But if you're wanting to get a similar I look. I definitely think that you could do it with the Colourpop palette, and again, this one is $16. So let me know your thoughts down below. Like I said, all of the shades are very, very comparable, and I'm so proud of Colourpop too, because I know I used to not be a huge fan of like their eyeshadows. I love their lip liners and lipsticks and everything like that, but I didn't love the shock shadows that they had, just because I'm not a huge fan of having like a bunch of different little individual pans, and I don't really like using my finger for shadows. So when they came out with like individual pan shadows, I thought I was going to have a heart attack because I was so excited. Very, very affordable. So great job to Colourpop. I'll keep you guys updated on when this is going to restock. And make sure that you stay tuned for my giveaway. I will not stay tuned, but it's going on right now, so I'll leave it in the comments below. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!